viewers, today's lecture is going to focus on one of the post-colonial writers, Jean Grease. She has written this post-colonial novel, White Sargasso Sea. You have already been introduced to the post-colonial writings, the features of post-colonial writings, and the prominent theorist of post-colonialism. So, this particular novel was written by Jean Grease. She was born on 24th of August 1890, and she was born in Dominica, Windward Islands in West Indies, and she died on 14th of May 1979 in Exeter, Devon, in England. Her original name was Ella Gwendolen Rees Williams. She was the daughter of a Welsh doctor and a Creole mother. So you see that Jean Grease had, a mixed identity. She was educated in Dominica and she went to London at the age of 16. She worked as an actress before moving to Paris. Her writing career is very interesting because she initially started with acting and then started writing. It was the English novelist Ford Madox Ford who encouraged Rees to write. So, we have the first collection of stories by Rees, which was titled The Left Bank, and it was published in the year 1927. The novels of Jean Grease include Postures, published in 1928, After Leaving Mr. Mackenzie, published in 1931, Voyage in the Dark, 1934, and Good Morning Midnight, published in 1939. White Sargasso Sea was published in 1966. So, which century was this? This was the 20th century, and you know that the post-colonial writings happened in the 19th and the 20th centuries. So, this particular work reconstructs a fictional character from Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre. This is the novel which you have already read in your previous semesters, and this particular novel, White Sargasso Sea, reconstructs Antonite Cosway, Mr. Rochester's mad wife in Jane Eyre. So, as she reconstructs and tries to tell us about the marginalized position, doubly marginalized position of the women, this post-colonial novel has the Dominican background in predominance. And we find that in most of the writings of Rees, Dominican background is prominent. Rees also identified with the black community. She also envied the vitality of the black community and contrasted it with the sterility of the white world. So the themes of friendship with black girls are quite predominant in her works. For example, in the post-colonial novel White Sargasso Sea, you have Tia and Christophine, whom she befriends. After having said about Jean Grease and her works, now I am going to focus on the themes of the novel. So, this novel primarily focuses on oppression, slavery, entrapment of the slaves and also the women in particular, the complex racial identity, madness of women especially, womanhood and slavery, disease, magic, and death. When we talk about oppression, a spectre of slavery and entrapment completely White Sargasso Sea. The ex-slaves who worked on the sugar plantations of the wealthy Creoles figure prominently in part 1 of the novel, which is set in West Indies in the early 19th century. Although the Emancipation Act had freed the slaves by the time of Antoinette's childhood, compensation had not been granted to the island's black population, which was breeding hostility and resentment between the servants and their white employers. Annette, who is Antoinette's, the protagonist's mother, is particularly attuned to the animosity that colors many employer-employee interactions. So, as I introduce you to the themes of White Sargasso Sea, you are also getting a glimpse into the plot of the novel, which particularly is set in the West Indies in the early 19th century. And what is the historical context? The context is the Emancipation Act, the emancipation of the slaves. But what had happened? They had not been given proper compensation, because of which there was some tug of war, or there was some kind of rivalry and rift between the employer and employee, the black and the white. So, enslavement greatly shapes the relationship in Fry's novels, and as it does, it also reveals things about Jean Rees. It was not just between the black and the white people. Annette, mother of the protagonist, feels helplessly imprisoned at Colibri Estate after the death of her husband. So, Colibri Estate is the place where the novel is written, or the place which is being talked about in the novel. So, she keeps on repeating this word. If you just go through the initial part of the novel, you will come across this word marooned time and time again. So she keeps repeating this. Likewise, Antoinette is also doomed to be in a form of an enslavement in her love for her dependency on her husband. So women in this novel are childlike, and they have a lot of dependence on fathers and husbands. Therefore, they are doubly marginalized, representing a figurative slavery that is made literal in Antoinette's ultimate physical captivity. In addition to the oppression and entrapment in slavery, the novel also surfaces the complexity of racial identity, the subtleties of race, and the intricacies of Jamaica's social hierarchy are amongst the main themes of the novel, and they lead to the development of the plot. So the whites born in England are distinguished from the white Creoles, who are the descendants of Europeans who have lived in the West Indies for one or more generations. So the complicating social structure of this population, was formerly enslaved, and these enslaved black people, they tried to maintain their own kinds of stratification. Christophine, for example, stands apart from the Jamaican servants because she is originally from the French Caribbean island of Martinique. There is a large there's a large mixed race population, as the white slave owners throughout the Caribbean and Americas were notorious, for ravishing the dignity of the female slaves. Sandy and Daniel Cosway, two of Alexander Cosway's illegitimate children, also occupy a middle ground between the black and the white society. So there is in the plot a lot of interaction between the racial groups, which is quite antagonistic. Antoinette and her mother do not share the purely racist views of other whites on the island. Both these women recognize their dependence on the black servants who care for them, and they have a feeling of respect that often borders on fear and resentment. So the power structures are based on race, which always appear to be on the brink of a reversal. So far, I have explained to you that the predominant themes of White Sargasso Sea are the oppression, slavery, entrapment, and also the kind of doubly marginalization of the women in that culture, and how Antoinette and her mother, they have a different kind of feeling than what the rest of the community has. So there are layers of complex racial identity prevalent throughout the novel. In addition to the presence of all sorts of entrapments of slavery, oppression, and the complex racial identity, we see that womanhood is presented in a very different manner. And what is the mark of difference is that womanhood is intertwined with several issues of enslavement and madness in the novel of Jean Rees. So, the ideals of proper feminine deportment are presented to Antoinette when she is a girl at the convent school. So, two of the other Creole girls, Miss Germain and Helena, embody the feminine virtues that Antoinette is to learn and emulate. Namely, these are beauty, chastity, and mild, even-tempered manners. Mother St. Justin's praises of the poised and the imperturbable sisters suggest an ideal womanhood that is at odds with Antoinette's own hot and fiery nature. So Antoinette's passion for contributes to her own melancholy and some kind of implied madness. So all in all, women are embodying some kind of virtues, and the protagonist, is not embodying those virtues up to that level, but she has a passion to emulate, and this is driving her into melancholy and madness. So Rees explores her female characters' legal and financial dependence on men also. So that also comes under the theme of womanhood. So after the death of her first husband, Antoinette's mother ensures that she marries for the second time, as this is an opportunity to escape from the Colibri Strait and regain status among her peers. Men also, have certain values attached to marriage, and what do they get? Marriage increases their wealth by granting them access to the wife's inheritance, and in both cases, womanhood is like synonymous with the kind of childlike dependence on the nearest man, be it father or the husband. So it is this dependence that precipitates the demise of both Antoinette and her mother Annette. Both women marry white Englishmen in hopes of assuaging their fears as vulnerable outsiders, but these men betray and abandon them. So madness in White Sargasso Sea is intricately, developed and is linked to the images of heat and fire and female sexuality in the novel. Madness is Antoinette's inheritance. Why? Because her father was mad, and according to the illegitimate son Daniel, as was her mother Annette. So this is something which she was obviously going to inherit. Antoinette's upbringing and environment exasperate her inherited condition. She feels dejected, she feels displaced, and she feels that nobody loves her. So this kind of feeling further leads into a paranoia and solitude, because of which she's prone to vivid and violent dreams and outbursts. So madness in White Sargasso Sea in Antoinette is not only because of the inheritance, but also because of the environment that she is living in, because of the relationship that she has with the men around her. So it is significant that women like Antoinette and her mother are most susceptible to madness. So they have a childlike servitude and a feminine docility. Their madness consigns them to live invisible and shameful lives. With the predominance of insanity in the novel, the plot forces us to question whose recollections are trustworthy. The fragmented memory of a mad woman like Antoinette opens up possibility for alternate stories and imagined realities. Disease is another theme of the novel. The whole Caribbean novel has an atmosphere of sickness, which is reflected through the perverse, unnatural, subjugated blacks by whites and of women by men. So this kind of repression explodes into fevers, fits, madness, and so the body says what the mouth cannot, right? So Antoinette and Rochester suffer from near fatal fevers as if to mark their feelings of persecution and fear of the outside world. So all the repressed feelings, are taking a form of a fit, fever, or disease. The images of disease, rot, illness also suggest the moral and financial decline of the Antoinette family. Disease works as a kind of moral retribution in that the Causeway family, after generations of abuse, inherits a legacy of what? Alcoholism, madness, and deformity. And the deformity is in the young boy, Antoinette's brother, Perry, who is a degenerate. So Antoinette naively believes that her family's cure lies abroad in England. So one of the night of fire, she leans over the crib of her sleeping brother, Perry, to assume him that once Mr. Mason takes them to England, he will be cured and made like other people. But England offers no cure to Antoinette, and she herself further deteriorates when she is there. In addition to the disease and sickness, death also becomes one of the themes in this novel, White Sargasso Sea. Death seemingly hovers over Antoinette every moment. On the first memories she recounts from her childhood is that of her mother's poisoned horse lying dead in the heart of in the heat with the swarming flies. So this image of the horse lying in heat with the flies swarming on it creates a mood of sinister anticipation and points to the evil undercurrents that haunt Colibri Estate. The death of the horse also foreshadows the deaths of Perry, Antoinette's mother, Aunt Cora, Mr. Mason, all of which leave Antoinette without a family. So attuned is she to the death's presence in her childhood tale that Antoinette foreshadows her own violent end. At Colibri again, there are some allusions with regards to the zombies and the ghosts, which contribute to the evil, sinister environment of the novel. Christophene's supernatural tales, which are drawn from the voodoo legends, share Antoinette's fascination with death. Antoinette incorporates these superstitions using a stick as a protective talisman and believing that her mother has become a zombie. A zombie, a body without a soul. So it is Antoinette's faith in an invisible word that accounts for her peculiar preoccupation with death. Last of all, we also have another theme, which is magic, because just a second ago I was talking about the voodoo legends and the supernatural tales Christophine was sharing. So, in a decision to take Antoinette away from Jamaica, Rochester bitterly thinks to himself, no more false heavens, no more damned magic. So the Windward Islands, where Grand Bois is located, are home to magical, syncretic religions of their black inhabitants. Christophine's unique powers, which command respect from her peers, derive from her expertise in hobby practices and her knowledge of casting spells. So I hope by now you have been able to understand that magic was also one of the themes in the novel. Antoinette incorporates Christophine's superstitious beliefs, leading her to read signs and symbols in the natural world. On the night of fire, for instance, Antoinette shrinks in horror when she sees her mother's parrot burn alive, and she believes that this is a bad luck to kill a parrot or watch one die. So, this knowledge of magic is Antoinette's source of power and independence. Fires are reoccurring throughout the novel, which represent destruction, damnation, and smoldering of passions. In part 1, we have Antoinette describing the fire that burned down the Colibri estate and triggered her mother's collapse into madness. Part 2 of the novel, Rochester describes the use of candles at night, paying particular attention to the moths that burn themselves in the flames. So these descriptions not only recall the grotesque death of Annette's bird, but they also mirror Antoinette's perverse fascination with fire and foreshadow her own tragic end. So today we have learned about Jean Freeze's writings. We have learned about the themes of oppression, enslavement, entrapment, racial identity, womanhood, madness, relationship of man-woman, the doubly marginalized status of women, the magic, disease, sickness, death that predominate, and because of all the perversity and the inheritance and environment that she has, Antoinette is able to foreshadow even her own tragic end. Thank you so much.